Welcome, dear subscribers.
As we embark on this journey of exploring the laws that lead to financial success, I invite you to join us in unlocking the secrets to realizing your dreams, particularly on the financial front. For those who haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time to do so. By subscribing, you gain access to smart content tailored to help you achieve your aspirations, optimize your path, and refine your entrepreneurial skills, should you already be a business owner.
Let's empower ourselves together to thrive and prosper.
Your pathway to wealth, at the genesis of all great achievements lies desire. Once upon a time, when Edwin C. Barnes disembarked from the train in East Orange, New Jersey, he might have appeared as a wanderer to the casual observer, but within him burned the aspirations of a sovereign.
Amidst his journey from the railway to Thomas A.
Edison's domain, his intellect toiled. He envisioned himself in dialogue with Edison, entreating him to bestow upon him the opportunity to realize his intense desire to become the confidant of the eminent inventor. The potency of a meticulously defined desire, Barnes's yearning wasn't a mere wish.
It wasn't a fleeting hope.
It was an ardent desire that transcended all else and was sharply demarcated. His desire wasn't born anew upon his approach to Edison. It had long been a prevailing force within him. Several years later, Edwin C. Barnes found himself face to face with Edison once more, within the very office where their initial encounter had transpired. This time, his desire had metamorphosed into reality. He stood as Edison's confidant. The vision that had governed his existence had materialized. Onlookers envied Barnes for his seemingly effortless existence.
They glimpsed only his triumphs.
They failed to scrutinize the genesis of his success. Barnes triumphed because he had charted a specific course for himself and had dedicated all his vigor and exertions to attaining that goal. He didn't instantaneously ascend to the role of Edison's confidant on the inaugural day. 5 years elapsed before the long-awaited opportunity presented itself to the world. Barnes was merely another cog in Edison's enterprise. But within his own psyche, he had been Edison's confidant from the moment he set foot in the establishment. It stands as a striking exemplification of the potency of defined desire. Barnes realized his aspirations because he yearned above all else to be Edison's confidant. And for that, he devised a strategy and incinerated bridges behind him. His desire, initially an obsession, materialized into tangible reality. During his sojourn to East Orange, he didn't mutter to himself, "I'll besiege Edison to secure me any job available," but rather, "I'll rendezvous with Edison and specify my intent to engage in business with him." Nor did he declare, "I'll toil there for a few months, and if met with no encouragement, I'll depart in pursuit of alternative employment," but rather, "I'll undertake whatever task Edison assigns me, for my desire is to be his confidant." Nor did he announce, "I'll seek alternative prospects if I'm unsuccessful with Edison," but rather, "The sole object of my desire is to Edison's confidant. And for that, I shall sever all retreats. My destiny hinges on my capacity to realize my aspirations." He left himself no recourse. Victory or oblivion was his only recourse. The entire crux of Barnes's triumph resides therein. How to nurture the burning desire to triumph. Once upon a time, a formidable warrior faced the dilemma of prevailing in battle against a numerically superior adversary.
He dispatched his troops aboard vessels and sailed to enemy shores.
There, he disembarked his soldiers and armaments before commanding the vessels to be set ablaze. Addressing his troops prior to the impending skirmish, he proclaimed, "As you can discern, we possess no means of retreat." This signifies that survival hinges solely on triumphing in battle.
We're left with no alternative. Victory must be ours or oblivion.
Triumph they did. Anyone aspiring to triumph in any endeavor must immolate their retreats and sever all avenues of withdrawal. This constitutes the solitary approach to sustain the burning desire to triumph, which serves as the gateway to success. Divergence between victors and vanquished. In the aftermath of the catastrophic Chicago fire, State Street merchants surveyed the charred remnants of their establishments. They convened to determine whether to rebuild or depart Chicago in search of greener pastures.
All save one elected to vacate the city.
Solemnly gesturing towards the ruins of his establishment, he declared, "Gentlemen, right here is where I shall erect the preeminent emporium in the world, and I shall do so even if it succumbs to flames repeatedly." A century has elapsed since that pronouncement.
The emporium stands erected. It endures as a towering monument to the might of that mentality known as burning desire. For Marshall Field, the path of least resistance would have entailed following his peers, who found the circumstances dire and the future bleak, opting to seek solace elsewhere. Take heed of this contrast between Marshall Field and his counterparts, for it mirrors the same distinction that set Edwin C. Barnes apart from the multitude of youths laboring within Edison's domain. It embodies the very distinction that separates victors from victims. At some juncture, every soul aspires for affluence. However, harboring a mere wish for opulence proves insufficient. One must embrace wealth with such fervor that it borders on obsession, then chart a meticulous blueprint for its acquisition, and tenaciously pursue that blueprint. Instructions for turning your desires into cash. Here are the 6 precise and practical instructions that will allow you to turn your desires into cash. 1. Fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It's not enough to say, "I want a lot of money," but you must specify the quantity. 2. Determine exactly what you intend to give in exchange for the money you desire. There's nothing for nothing. 3. Set the date by which you want to be in possession of the money you desire. 4. Define a precise plan that will help you achieve your desire, and start its implementation immediately, even if you think you're not yet ready. 5. Clearly write on paper the sum you want to acquire, the deadline you've set for its acquisition, what you intend to give in return, and the precise plan you've developed to achieve all this. 6. Read your written goals aloud twice a day, in the evening before bed and in the morning upon waking up. During this reading, you must see, feel, and believe in possession of this money. It's important that you follow these 6 instructions to the letter, especially the 6th. You must have a mind saturated with the desire for money. You may think it's impossible for you to see yourself in possession of this money before you actually have it. Remember that you need a burning desire to help you. If you truly and deeply desire this money, and it becomes an obsession, you will have no difficulty convincing yourself that you are already rich. What's necessary is to want money and be so determined to have it that it's easy to convince yourself that you already possess it. Only those who have become money conscious will accumulate great wealth. Having money consciousness means having a mind completely saturated with the desire for money. These individuals are ready to become rich and easily envision themselves in possession of wealth. These instructions may seem impractical to those who are not initiated into the principles of how the human brain operates. It's good for skeptics to know that thanks to these 6 instructions, Andrew Carnegie, a steelworker, became wealthy. It should also be noted that the late Thomas A. Edison followed these 6 recommended steps and considered them not only essential steps for accumulating money but also necessary for achieving any defined goal. Have enough imagination, be a dreamer. To follow these instructions, you won't need to work hard or make sacrifices, you won't need to appear ridiculous, naive, or highly educated. But on the other hand, you'll need enough imagination to understand that fortune isn't made by chance or luck, and that you must first dream, hope, want, desire, and develop a plan before succeeding. Also know that you won't accumulate great wealth if you don't have the burning desire to become rich and if you don't believe it's possible. You should also know that all great leaders are dreamers. Today, Christianity is the greatest potential power in the world because its founder was a great dreamer, who had the ability to see and imagine realities in their mental and spiritual form before they were transformed into true realities. If, in your imagination, you're unable to see yourself acquiring a lot of money, you'll never see as much in your bank account. Have a well-defined goal and a burning desire. For those of us committed to the pursuit of wealth, let's know that the modern world we live in has changed and needs new ideas, new leaders, new inventions, new teaching methods, new marketing methods, new books, new literature, new devices for radio, new ideas for television and cinema. To succeed, you must have a well-defined goal, know exactly what you want, and have a burning desire to possess it. This changed world needs practical dreamers who will put their dreams into action. Practical dreamers have always been, and will always be, the shapers of civilization. Those of us who desire to accumulate wealth should remember that the true leaders of humanity, those who have always dominated the world, have turned their thoughts into skyscrapers, cities, factories, airplanes, automobiles, and many other things that make life more enjoyable. Tolerance and open-mindedness are the qualities necessary for today's dreamers. Those who fear new ideas are doomed before they even start. Once you've decided to acquire your share of wealth, don't let yourself be influenced, even if your dream is mocked. Try to recapture the spirit of the great pioneers whose dreams gave our civilization its most valuable assets and the opportunity to develop and launch our talents. Never give up. If what you want to do is right, honest, and you believe in it, then go ahead, do it. No matter what others may say if you encounter temporary defeat. They don't know that every failure carries the seed of success. Thomas Edison dreamed of an electric lamp and realized it after more than 10,000 failures. He persisted until his dream was realized. Practical dreamers never give up. Wayland dreamed of a chain of cigar stores and put his dream into action. Now, United Cigar Stores occupied prime locations in America. Lincoln dreamed of the freedom of black slaves. He put his dream into action and his dream became reality. The Wright brothers dreamed of a machine that would soar through the air. Now we can see the realization of their dream everywhere in the world. Marconi dreamed of a system that would harness the intangible forces of the atmosphere. Every radio and television in the world is proof that he didn't dream in vain. His friends had him watched and even forced him to undergo a psychiatric examination when he announced to them that he had discovered a way to send messages through the atmosphere, without the aid of wires or any other means of communication. Today, dreamers are better received. The world is getting used to new discoveries. It shows a willingness to reward the dreamer who gives the world a new idea. The world is filled with opportunities that past dreamers never knew. The starting point of a dreamer must be the burning desire to be and to do. If you are lazy or unambitious, you will never realize your dream. The circumstances of life are often strange. Remember that all those who have succeeded have first experienced difficult moments before reaching their goals. Often, these difficult moments have revealed their true selves. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress, one of the masterpieces of English literature, after being imprisoned for his religious ideas. O. Henry discovered his genius after he encountered great misfortune and was imprisoned in Columbus, Ohio. He was forced to discover his true self and to employ his imagination. He became a great writer instead of remaining a miserable criminal. Life's circumstances are often strange. We are sometimes forced to endure all sorts of punishments before discovering who we truly are and the useful ideas we are capable of creating through our imagination. Edison, the greatest inventor in the world, was a telegraph operator of noise. He failed for a long time before discovering the genius within him. Charles Dickens began by sticking labels on blackened bottles. The drama of his first love deeply affected him, and he became one of the true great authors of the world. This tragedy produced David Copperfield, followed by other masterpieces. He knew how to transform his strong emotions into constructive dreams. This tragedy produced David Copperfield, followed by other masterpieces. He knew how to transform his strong emotions into constructive dreams. Helen Keller became deaf, mute, and blind shortly after birth. Despite her great misfortune, her name is engraved in the pages of the history of the greats. Her entire life shows us that defeat only exists when we accept it as reality. Robert Burns, a young illiterate man, was destined for poverty and alcoholism. But his poetic work flourished like a rose he had grown in the mud. Booker T. Washington was born a slave, so he was handicapped by his race and color. But because he was tolerant, had an open mind at all times, on all subjects, and was a dreamer, he left a good impression on an entire race. Beethoven was deaf, Milton was blind, but they will always remain famous because they dreamed and realized their dreams be ready to receive wealth. Before moving on to the next chapter, ignite once again in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these mindsets and understand the workings of the principles described in this book, all your dreams will come true when you are ready. There is a difference between desiring something and being ready to receive it.
You are ready when you believe you can acquire it. You must believe in it and not just wish or hope.
Having an open mind is essential to believe in it.
A closed mind gives neither faith nor courage. Remember that aiming high, desiring abundance and prosperity, does not require more effort than accepting misery and poverty. A great poet expressed this eternal truth. I asked life for a penny, and it didn't give me much, although I prayed in the evening behind my miserable counter. For life is the fairest of mistresses, she gives you what you ask for, but once your wage is fixed you must be content with it. I worked for a lackey's wage only to learn, dismayed, that life would have willingly paid anything I would have asked her.
A great poet expressed this eternal truth. I asked life for a penny, and it didn't give me much, although I prayed in the evening behind my miserable counter. For life is the fairest of mistresses, she gives you what you ask for, but once your wage is fixed, you must be content with it.
I worked for a lackey's wage only to learn, dismayed, that life would have willingly paid anything I would have asked her. Desire makes the impossible possible. I would like to introduce you to the most extraordinary being I have ever known. I saw him for the first time a few minutes after his birth. His little head bore no trace of ears.
The doctor declared that the child was deaf-mute for life.
I rejected this diagnosis. I had the right to because I was the child's father, but I said nothing.
I kept my opinion to myself. I decided that one day my son would hear and speak.
In my mind, I knew that my son could become normal. I was sure there was a solution, and I knew I would find it. I thought of Emerson's words. The evolution of things will teach us faith. We should only obey.
There is advice for each of us, and by simply listening, we will hear the right word. The right word.
Desire.
More than anything in the world, I desired for my son to be normal. I never wavered, not even for a second. Because of this desire, a few years earlier, I had written, "Our only limitations are those we set in our own minds." For the first time, I wondered if this phrase was true because the lie on the bed in front of me was a newborn child, and had no hearing equipment. Even if he could hear and speak one day, he would obviously be disfigured for life. But this child surely had not imposed this limitation on himself. What could I do? Somehow, I had to find a way to transfer my own intense desire into this child's mind and make him hear a sound without the help of ears. When he was a little older and cooperative, and his mind was filled with the intense desire to hear, this desire turned into physical reality. All these thoughts were in my own mind, but I didn't talk to anyone about them. Every day, I repeated to myself the commitment I had made to myself. To make my son normal. When he was a little older and began to take an interest in the objects around him, we noticed that he heard very faintly. At an age when children usually start speaking, he didn't even try to babble, but we knew from his actions that he vaguely heard some sounds. That was all I wanted to know.
I was convinced that if he could hear, even faintly, he could develop his hearing.
And one day, this hope was confirmed in an entirely unexpected way. The child heard. We bought a phonograph. When the child heard music for the first time, he was amazed and quickly took over the device. One day, he played the same piece for almost 2 hours, standing in front of the phonograph. his teeth clinging to the edge of the chest.
Later, we learned that bone is a good conductor of sound, and that was the reason for this attitude.
Shortly after, I discovered that he heard me perfectly when I spoke by pressing my lips on the mastoid bone at the base of his skull. It was time to transfer my intense desire into his mind. As he loved to be told stories, I invented stories that were meant to develop his self-confidence, his imagination, and an intense desire to hear and be normal. With his favorite story, I gave, every time I told it, a new dramatic intensity. Its purpose was to make him understand that his disability was not a burden but a valuable asset. Although all philosophies had clearly taught me that all misfortune carries the seed of success, I must admit that I absolutely did not see how his deafness could turn into an asset. Yet I continued to include this philosophy in the stories I told him, hoping that the time would come when I would find out how his disability would enable him to achieve a useful goal. Hope and faith had enabled me to continue. Looking back on this experience, I realized that the amazing result we obtained was primarily due to the faith my son had in me. He never questioned what I told him. I persuaded him that he had an advantage over his older brother, and that this advantage would play in his favor in many ways. For example, at school, his teachers would take more care of him and would be very kind. And that was always the case. Thank you for being dedicated, repeatedly engaging with our content to truly grasp its essence. Your commitment is truly appreciated. I encourage you to share these insights, as together, we can spread wealth. Get ready for the next in our Financial Success series, where we continue our journey towards prosperity and fulfillment.